Hi there. Welcome back to the Reel Film Chronicles. As always, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Brian.
And in this week's exciting episode, we're going to be taking a look at a little film called Nope.
2022 came out, I think, near the end of July of the summer there. Directed by Jordan Peele, starring a bunch of quality actors: Daniel Kaluuya, Keke Palmer, Brendan Pereira, Michael Wincott, and Stephen Yeun, amongst a whole bunch of other folks there. This is Jordan Peele's third feature film. Started out with Get Out, followed up by Us, and now we got Nope. The hype was off the charts for this movie. At least I felt it. I was in a theater watching some random piece of garbage film, and before that movie was the trailer or teaser for Nope. I was like, oh my God, I am going to be there day one. Were you excited for Nope? How do you feel about Jordan Peele's movie filmography so far?
Yeah, I don't know if this is kind of spoiling things up front, but I absolutely loved Get Out and Us. I think Jordan Peele has established himself as kind of part of the new premier horror pantheon, alongside other names like Ari Aster, Justin Moorhead and Aaron Benson, or Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. I always get the names mixed up.
Quick trivia for you. We did a Moorhead and Benson movie way back in the day, Synchronic.
Yeah.
And we had to go back in and re-edit the audio because you got the last names mixed up or something. It was so difficult.
Yeah,
Aaron Moorhead. I'm not even sure if we did that properly or not.
Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson.
I love it.
So I was going into this. The marketing for Nope left me, it was kind of lackluster. I wasn't really like, the marketing didn't work for me, but I was excited to see Nope based on Jordan Peele's first two feature-length films.
Yeah. So
like I went into this with very high expectations based on the quality of the previous work. I know a lot of people, or at least a lot of people online, seem to not respond as well to Us as they did to Get Out. There was a more lukewarm reception, but I think it was at your place when you threw on Us, and I was blown away. It worked great as a horror film, but also as with Jordan Peele, obviously with his third effort of Nope, it's becoming clear that all of his horror works, I think, so well because it's underlined by like real world kind of social issues and real world kind of horrors.
There's a lot of really good social commentary going on at multiple levels of his films. Like he's established that, right? It's like this guy can write a film and direct one. Like the talent is almost unmatched there.
Yeah, it's weird to think because like before Get Out came out, like obviously Jordan Peele is most associated with comedy, with the Key and Peele sketch show. That's where that's the only thing I knew him from. It's a weird.
It was very shocking.
Maybe not a weird transition because comedy. I think comedy and horror are similar in that they're both about effectively subverting expectations. So maybe there is more of a connection between comedy and horror than we may think at first blush. But yeah, it's like I thought of Jordan Peele as like comedy guy, but he's established himself as like pretty much like one of the best names in horror working today by far.
Yeah, like in both comedy and horror, there's a very definite like lead up to a big payoff. And one is the scare, or maybe the jump scare, or the suspense. And in comedy, it's building up to that joke and the punchline.
And it's all about timing, right? It's getting like that timing right. Like jump scares work because of the timing. So I think that understanding of like the timing of a joke and the timing of a scare, I think there's a lot more overlap than maybe, like we would think about typically. But I think that's what maybe speaks to his success. Also, he's one of these jerks who's just like super talented.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's just like, why hasn't this guy been making movies for the past 20 years? But and you're right. I mean, I'd never really watched the content he did before, the Key and Peele comedy series. I didn't see him on Mad TV. I think maybe he was on SNL for a little bit. I'm not sure.
Oh, was he?
He's definitely made the comedy rounds, I think.
Was he in Mad TV?
I believe so. I was reading a little bit about it beforehand, and it's one of the reasons why in Nope you see like a Mad magazine in the movie. But yeah, no, it's just like, I don't really watch a lot of comedy shows and skit shows. I mean, SNL is something I'd watch when I was a teenager, and it just gradually fell away. And now I'm too old to stay up that late on a Saturday night to to watch something like that. But man, this content he's doing, these movies that Peele's been doing is just really good. You wonder like what more can this guy do? So the marketing for me, all you need to do is throw a poster on with his name on it, and I'm there. I mean, seeing Get Out in theaters, oh, that was something else. Us, I remember walking out of Us feeling like I didn't know if I really got it. I didn't really understand like the whole Hands Across America. I didn't really understand how it was all kind of put together. If I'm rewatching it afterwards, like, oh my goodness, this movie really is like just structurally, acting, the writing, everything on it is just on fire. And it's like, if that one had some incredible music too, the music drops and stuff was just bananas.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the social stuff, like the Hands Across America, I think it was in reference to a cultural event that was a little bit before our time as well. So
Yeah.
going back and reading up a bit more, but I heard like it was just like in the periphery of my cultural awareness as like a cultural. It was referenced several times, usually in a disparaging manner. So I had to actually go back and like read about what it meant. But like then in the context of the movie, it makes a lot more sense. So, but I like movies like that make me think, that make me work a little bit. That forced me to go out and it's like, oh, like it piques my curiosity enough that I actually want to go out and read more about this and kind of get a broader perspective and do a deep dive. And I think Jordan Peele's films really invite the audience members to give them a deep dive and to peel back the layers of meaning and I think I was watching Get Out recently and watching some of the special features, and I think one of the things he was saying was that he wants his movies to spark those conversations and to be a catalyst for some of those discussions and for some of that cultural discourse. And I think on that level as well, his movies succeed as well as being really, really effective horror movies. Like I watched Get Out recently again, and man, the whole thing was just like I was creeped out the whole time. Like just the way he builds suspense slowly. Yeah, just a master of the craft, really.
Yeah, really quite fantastic. So normally what we like to do on the podcast is we will talk about the movie and throw a huge spoiler warning right up front. If you haven't seen the movie yet, check it out. I think it's safe to say, I'm going to say this movie is definitely recommended. Go watch it if you haven't watched it yet. We'll talk about the movie, and at the end we're going to give our ratings. We use the letterbox scale of 5 stars with a possible heart, a special kind of like bonus on top. And at that time, we'll also talk about how the movie compares out there, what the average letterbox rating is, IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, all that fun stuff. What's a bad miracle? Residents in a lonely gulch of inland California bear witness to an uncanny, chilling discovery. So, I mean, right up front, I mean, the advertising for this basically led us to think, yeah, this is going to be a Jordan Peele horror movie about aliens, right? And we got, of course, so much more than just, a standard like sci-fi horror film. We got all sorts of stuff layered on top of this. What are some of the things that really stood out to you? Is there one big thing out of note? Like, how did you feel upon that first watching of this? I assume you watched it a couple times now.
No, I haven't yet. I'm gonna probably do in October as part of my annual horror marathon.
Which good idea.
I think both of us we usually try to do like I know you do Hooptober, and I just do a general
sort of a franchise focused, watching a lot of movies in a series and watching a lot of classics as well.
My goal specifically is just to get like essentially like 31 horror movies watched in the month of October.
It's no easy feat, that's for sure.
Yeah, not with all this pesky stuff like work and family and all this nonsense getting in the way. But yeah, so watching the movie, I think for me, there's a lot going on, but I think the thing that stuck out for me the most was this tension between kind of the civilized and the natural worlds. Like there was obvious themes of kind of respect and fascination and awe with nature versus that kind of exploitation of nature or like attempted dominance of nature. And so it's that kind of relationship and how you reconcile that tension and what the strategy is going forward. I think obviously with that two kind of main storylines, one with Stephen Yeun's character, was it Ricky
Jupe?
Park, Ricky the Jupe, essentially representing that kind of exploitative model of the relationship with nature, and then OJ Haywood, played by Daniel Kaluuya, representing that kind of respect slash balanced relationship with nature, and seeing like part of the consequences when you try to dominate nature and don't respect its rules or the natural laws. So I think for me, that was kind of the fundamental kind of message that was being explored. How about you? What were your initial thoughts watching this movie?
Oh man, I just I was loving every second of it. It felt, I don't want to say this in a derogatory way, maybe a little more straightforward, or at the very least, because I mentioned before, like Us was maybe a little more confusing for me in terms of the themes and whatnot. This one seemed a little more straightforward, or at least I could pick up on some things a little more easily.
It was a lot more linear in terms of the plot. There was no there were some reveals, but it wasn't like Shyamalan-esque kind of twists in it, right? I don't think.
And I think walking away from it, it was all about, that exploitation. And I think because I just read this, last night when I was looking up stuff about the movie, and I can't think of a better way to phrase it. And I think it's Peele's own words, the addiction to spectacle. And it's all about Hollywood and exploiting spectacle. And the big thing here is kind of exploiting tragedy in different forms, and taming. The other big thing is of course that, like, humans versus nature. It's just like trying to tame and domesticate wild animals, and the treatment of animals in that particular industry and in life in general, really. Stephen Yeun's character, like Jupe, he's trying to tame this wild beast out in the wild, and when he thinks he has it, he doesn't, and it costs him his life and his family, all of the spectators, the friends and family that he holds there, where he's going to show off. Is like, hey, here's my new alien creature that's terrifying, but you know what? I got this figured out. We're going to feed him a horse, type of thing. And he's exploiting that because he grew up in the industry as a child actor, and he's sort of a hint that maybe it's all that he kind of knows. And he's seen it firsthand, and he doesn't learn from it when Gordy, one of the is a
chimpanzee.
One of the chimpanzees that plays this Gordy character on a sitcom, basically loses his mind when a balloon pops on set and just viciously attacks everybody. And it's just that scene where Gordy like kind of calms down and finally sees little boy Jupe hiding under the table, and goes over. He's just like, oh, like he's calmed down and he's back in, like he's friendly again, right? And it's just that juxtaposition of the walking on a razor's edge of trying to tame wild animals and thinking that you have a line on the situation. He thinks they're buddies again, and then he's the chimpanzee's violently shot and killed in front of Jupe. It's got to be scarring, but he basically chooses a life of exploitation of his career in that event, and he has that secret room full of all the memorabilia and all that stuff on it. And he's basically built a ranch with a lot of spectacles at it, like rides and photo opportunities for all the different content he's done. But it's like, at the core, that is the event that made him famous, and he's going to ride that out as long as possible, which, we see that people wanting their 15 minutes of fame and stretching it out as long as they can.
Yeah, no, well said. I think just to put things in context, in terms of, this could be super spoilery, the UFO turns out not to be a ship piloted by aliens. It turns out to be a living creature itself, whether of extraterrestrial origin or not. It's never clearly stated.
It's nice and ambiguous. They don't lean into it.
So it could just be like a holdover from a prehistoric race of, aerial based creatures that, possibly this could be the source of a lot of UFO sightings and stuff based on the world of the movie. It's kind of neat that way. So that parallel, and it's nice that you mentioned that scene with Gordy, because Stephen Yeun's character Jupe was a child actor on this sitcom, and the conceit of the sitcom was that they were living with they had like adopted a chimpanzee as part of the family. Really, because I noticed in some online dialogue, and people were wondering about like the Gordy flashbacks and the Gordy storyline seemed superfluous to the story. But I would argue that really that whole Gordy storyline was really the cipher, really the key to reading the rest of the movie, right? I think, like you talked about, this idea of spectacle, of trying to essentially exploit nature for our own amusement. And there's obviously a lot of critique in the movie about the entertainment industry as a whole, and movie making, which could potentially be either, meant to capture these awe-inspiring moments or to exploit, depending on how you use that technology. But the whole idea of trying to domesticate or dominate a wild animal really got me thinking about, even as I was watching the movie, about the Tiger King. And I remember that whole series, which is kind of like, I don't know, they're making like a new like mini series, like a fictionalized version of events with actors playing these characters.
Yeah.
But just this whole subculture of people in the States and other parts of the world as well, taking these wild animals like tigers or wild animals and bringing them into their homes and treating them like they're domesticated animals. And then you see, even in that series, some of the horrible consequences of people getting mauled or even losing limbs because these animals are not being respected. They're being exploited.
Yeah.
And not respecting that kind of that power of and the consequences that come with the civilized world interacting with the natural world. I think that's a huge part of it too. Like when they make this plan to capture this thing on video, right? And they're coming up with their plot and everything. And OJ basically says is the opposite of Stephen Yeun's character Jupe. He's like, we can't dominate this thing. One of the things is like, you can't look up at it, because a lot of wild animals take that as a sign of aggression. So it's like, you can't dominate nature. You can't dominate these wild animals. You can only strike a balance, and you agree to kind of play by their rules and like share this territory. You can't control this territory and control this animal. So it was a really, really, I think, important message, and really kind of, I mean, you could write entire essays about this subject matter based on this movie.
I was going to say, I'm glad you brought up Tiger King, but also it reminds me of Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter.
Right.
Left our world way too early, and just such a champion for animals, and also teaching us that we are always in their domain. That if a snake bites him, it is not the snake's fault, right? It is our fault for impeding upon their territory. And really, I mean, trying to show off these wild animals, like it's a dangerous game. And Tiger King, especially, because I feel like everyone is familiar with the show. Yeah. Everyone has seen this at the very beginning of the pandemic in 2020. We're all watching this. Like, it brought in, like, it was just this ultimate comfort thing. And there's the exploiting, like, this tragedy. And it was so fascinating too, because there's so many moving parts to that. But that has to play a factor on Peele's creation of this movie. And for what I'm reading, he announced this movie in late 2020. He wrote it at the beginning of the pandemic, and he would have been exposed to that Tiger King stuff as well. Now, he, I think, went on record and said he really got a lot of inspiration from movies like Jurassic Park and Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Makes sense.
And like Jurassic Park is this great example of trying to dominate nature. Like, you're bringing back prehistoric creatures and trying to make a spectacle out of them, right? I mean, it's very literal when you look back at it and think all humans are basically just being crazy, but it's like, it's never really the dinosaurs' fault for their actions and what they're doing there. They're just being themselves. And that plays a factor, huge.
Life finds a way.
Yeah, life finds a way, and this is the exact same thing here. It's just they're showing us characters that are exploiting nature and these animals for their different reasons.
Well, I like that idea. Like, I think you were talking before about Gordy and like saying now it's not the animal's fault, right? Because like you're looking at here's these animals with like millions of years of evolutionary instinct built into them, programmed into them. You can't just take a first generation. I mean, you look at, for example, like domesticated animals we have today. You think like livestock, like cows, or pets like horses and or not horses, pets like dogs and cats. Like that took generations and hundreds of years of breeding to domesticate those animals, and even through those hundreds of years, they're not fully domesticated.
I love hearing that, yeah, that like cats are still one step away from being their feral selves. And it's like there's an animal that truly takes advantage of social situations. Like they're happy to be freely fed and live in your cozy house, but it's always their choice to do so, right? I just love that you're still so close to wild creatures.
Yeah, and even like we have a dog, and she's great. She's lovely. She's around us, super great. Ever since the pandemic started, and we didn't have a lot of company over, she's gotten super protective and territorial over the house. We've been trying to break her, but people come over, she will go nuts. She will, to protect us. She still has those animal instincts built in. We bred in a lot of, like, not we personally, but like humanity has bred in a lot of traits that we found desirable and tried to breed out that wildness. But I think even with domesticated animals, we have to acknowledge that there are still instincts programmed in. We've been domesticating them for hundreds of years or even thousands, but evolution has been programming them for millions of years before that. And like looking at our own evolutionary chain is like it took tens of thousands of years for us to go from, well, millions of years, but then like hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of years to go from essentially living in caves in a quasi-primitive, simian kind of states to modern day. Incredibly, even that's an incredibly short time scale to look at geological time. So that balance of respecting nature and engaging with animals, kind of, you have to meet them halfway almost and engage with animals based on their own rules and their own laws. And even if you go through, like, I don't know if you did with your cats, like with dogs, it's more common to go through like training programs. But even that, it's like, like the trainer will come in as like understanding like the behavior of these pack animals they were pack animals and they still are. And like learning how to not fight against their instincts, but how to guide their instincts to, better behavior. So it's about working in partnership with nature as opposed to, the Tiger King and his clients try to dominate nature and make it bend to their will and try to treat these animals as if they were domesticated or as if they could control them fully, which is not only laughable and unwise, but also incredibly dangerous.
It's really crazy. And I mean, growing up in the 80s, we went to zoos and all this stuff. Like we were fully involved on it, or involved in that world of just enjoying all this stuff. But over the years, there's so much more awareness of just how awful a lot of these places run, like the cruelty towards the animals, not just in terms of like how they're treated by humans specifically, because there's a lot of good caretakers for animals, right? And they're going to gravitate towards those scenarios where they get to care for them. But, keeping a tiger or these wild animals in a relatively small caged in area is just cruel on its own. And especially in the aquatic sector there, like the marine land and all this stuff, these giant like killer whales and stuff being kept in these tanks because financially it costs a fortune. So put them in smaller tanks. So these animals just suffer constantly through it. There's so much more awareness of that going on, and my heart really goes out to all of them. It's just we need that nature balance, and we need to respect that. But maybe that's getting a little off topic here.
No, I think it's completely on topic because I think the whole thing with Gordy and how like essentially it wasn't his fault, right? I think he killed some of the castmates and he brutally mauled like the one co-star there who shows up later in the film, and you see kind of her through her veiled face, like she is horribly mutilated, which I think is like there's something even more horrific about her surviving that and being horribly mutilated, as opposed to just like almost like the mercy of kind of dying, because you see Gordy kind of shown like it's kind of it's hidden, but he's like pounding on her face and then like eating parts of her face, and it's like,
well, they really don't show very much on screen at all. It's very much like off camera, but the sound design and everything works towards like putting you in that scene, and the brutality of it all is very difficult to watch.
Incredibly horrific. Yeah.
Now, I did want to ask, did you think they actually killed any of the crewmates? Because I think this is an important thing where, yes, she survived. There was the father actor who was also attacked, and it's unclear what happened to him afterwards.
No, I think didn't they specifically say that he was dead? I'm pretty sure that at least one or more was actually dead.
I'd have to go watch, because at one point he's describing in great detail a Saturday Night Live sketch on essentially the Gordy incident, and like Chris Kattan playing Gordy and going crazy on set. And you think, oh man, that's really insensitive that they would make light of such a horrific incident. It's like, would something like that actually happen? And the fact is, like, I can't say the fact is, but the thing is, yeah, I mean, it's another spectacle. It's a piece of entertainment. That might be their opening act on Saturday Night Live or any other comedy sketches. It's always a thing. There's going to be a tragedy. And how long afterwards can we start making jokes about that tragedy, right? I mean, that's a common thing we've heard about for many years now.
Well, I think the whole thing with Jupe's story too is like there's a tragedy to that character, even though he's essentially trying to continue that cycle of exploitation. It's because he was also, that's all he's learned, right? He was a child star, and he's been in the entertainment industry since he was a little kid, and he saw, it's like, oh, the chimpanzee Gordy, he attacked everybody except for Stephen Yeun's character Jupe when he was a child at that time. You see through flashbacks to reveal like he was hiding under the table, and he kind of like, it's almost like he inadvertently is following those rules, right? Where like the tablecloth kind of obscured his eyes.
Yeah.
So he like,
it's a little translucent.
Yeah. So it's like Gordy can't see his eyes, so he can't see him looking at him, so he doesn't take it as a challenge. But he comes over to Stephen Yeun's character. It's not Stephen Yeun at the time. Sorry, it's just the Ricky character, the Jupe character, and he reaches out to give him like the fist bump, because that was the thing they would do, like their signature kind of move on the show. The whole thing was like he was confused, right? He was kind of almost inadvertently following the animal's rules of not trying to assert dominance over it, but in his mind, being a child performer, being in the entertainment industry, and that's all he knows, he sees everything through that lens. It's almost like, oh, he came over to me because I was his friend, because I had that kind of power and control over him. And so you see there's a tragedy in him trying to recreate that, what he saw as a special connection with Gordy, and try to recreate a special connection with the alien creature, which he didn't have a special connection with Gordy. Gordy was a wild animal who sometimes would act nice as long as you followed his rules. Don't make loud noises. Don't challenge, because it probably saw itself as the king of the castle, right? It probably saw, it didn't realize it was performing for people. It was like, oh, like all these people give me bananas because I'm the king, and like I'm in charge of the pack or something, right?
Yeah, like this creature, like the sky creature, is basically being fed these horses on a regular basis for a few months, and it's just, which like, is a nice touch,
because it's never explicitly said, like, because he keeps buying horses from OJ because OJ's farm is in trouble. It's like, oh, and at one point it's like, oh, I want to like have a payment plan to eventually buy them back once I get some money. It's like, and like Jupe is being really cagey about it, and it's like, we can work something out. But then you find out later he's been using the horses to feed this alien creature, right, to try and quote unquote tame it, which of course you mentioned goes completely awry.
It goes
at the end.
So horribly awry, and I think we'll have to get into that in a moment here. But I saw this really great comment about the monkey's paw, and how Jupe, as a child actor, basically like literally took the monkey's paw, like deal, under the table, right? And basically, and I mean, he probably enjoyed a lot more fame and whatnot because of that. It got him in the news and becomes a household name. If they're telling the story, like this is the part he played in it, so he can ride that fame out throughout his celebrity career. But I thought that was an interesting note on literally taking the monkey's paw. And of course, something bad happening later on. He enjoys all this great success, and then boom, he gets sucked into this creature, which is so absolutely horrific.
Like Jupe, I think he's kind of an antagonist, but he's also like a sympathetic character too. Cause like, I think when you were talking about that, when they asked him about the incident with Gordy and he's an adult now, and he talks, instead of talking about the incident directly, what he does is, it's really interesting. He talks, like you said, about the SNL sketch about the incident, which, on a side note, hearing all those names again, like Chris Kattan and Sherry O'Terry and all those, like that was like the era of like SNL that we grew up with. So it was neat, like having those shout outs again. But I think the whole thing was like, the tragedy there was that he was so traumatized. That event was so traumatizing that he's unable to process it completely. The only way he can process it is by having one step removed and talking about this SNL sketch, which seems like it's so absurd that he went there when they talk about trauma. But like, that's it. This event was so traumatizing him, hurt him so deeply. The only way he can engage with it is through this third party, this comedic representation of it through the media. That's how deeply it hurt him. And that was like, when I was watching that, I was like, that was like, you could see the pain on his face too. Like Steven Yeun did a really good job conveying that kind of
phenomenal actor.
The sense of pain and the sense of trauma. And like, there was a tragedy to that character that he was so emotionally damaged. He can't even engage with his own emotions directly. He has to filter his emotions and that trauma through the media. There was something kind of very true about that, right? Where like something traumatic happens and you almost kind of like emotionally kind of distance yourself from that traumatic event.
Yeah, you start looking at it from a different perspective.
It's easier to say, it's like, oh, this happened to my younger self. It happened to somebody else, or it happened to Chris Kattan in a sketch on SNL. It was a great way of like building up also sympathy for that character of Jupe, where he was almost caught in this cycle of exploitation. It was like, that's all he was taught. That's all he learned. So that's all he knew how to do. So it was almost like, there's almost a parallel there as well, as like nature has its cycles that it perpetuates, or it has its, evolutionary programming built into it. But we also have our own cycles that we perpetuate, and we have our kind of social programming as well. That's sometimes where we fall victim to this programming. It's partially, I don't want to advocate people of individual responsibility, but we have these forces at work, psychologically, right?
Yeah. So the creature itself, this flying UFO shaped cloud creature that hides in the clouds all this time. Like, I love creature features, and this one kind of delves into that. I mean, I was kind of happy it's not just a standard UFO with a bunch of little green men in it. It sort of subverted our expectations there a little bit.
Can I say that one scene with the alien fake out was like, I was truly unsettled there, and I was like, that was a really creepy scene.
Yeah. So yeah, Jupe's kids, like were they like the children of Jupiter there or something?
Yeah.
I can't remember what they call themselves, but it's like they have these masks, and they're getting ready to sell these alien masks as part of the big spectacle, like part of the big show of displaying this alien. Really, I mean, Peele knows how to direct a horror scene, right? And I remember reading somewhere, I don't know if this was a critic or something, or maybe they were talking about it, but basically this is a scene where Peele is saying, yeah, I can make a standard horror film. It's going to be awesome, but I don't need to make a standard horror film. I need to make something better than that. I'm giving you all this extra commentary, all the hidden depth, all the in plain sight references and all that stuff. Like, his movies are layered from top to bottom. It's delicious.
I think like that whole scene was just like him flexing. It's like, yeah, I can just do like regular horror and blow it out, knock it out of the park.
That is perfect. Yeah. So the creature design itself, like, well, what did you think of this? Like, well, it was pretty gnarly. Like, essentially, I mean, it looks like a UFO, sort of like a big silver flying saucer, and it essentially like sucking people up into the middle of it. And it's not entirely clear what initially is going on, but it's essentially like holding on to people and then grinding them up to eat them, essentially, right? If that's what's going on. Like, at the end of the film, like, it really showed it, like it sort of expanded out, and it kind of reminded me of like a jellyfish and sails and all this stuff. Was a really interesting.
It makes sense because like you look at it and it's like, how can this thing stay afloat in the air? But then you look at the end when it kind of unfurls itself, and it's almost like ribbons and sails kind of almost like wrapped up together. It's like, okay, so it's like it's super, when you see it like fully extended, it's like it must be super light comparatively, like a very like low kind of mass to weight ratio. That's like, okay, this makes sense why this thing is able to kind of stay afloat, right? I thought it was really unique. The whole twist is like, it's not a ship, it's a creature. It's like, okay, this is a creature unlike anything we've seen before. I love to see that. It was really, really neat and really, really unsettling when they finally showed the inside and the digestive tract. When you said it sucks up, Steven Yeun thinks he has it under control, and is like, oh, he's unveiling it to the audience for the first time, including his poor mutilated co-star who survived that terrible chimpanzee attack, only to be sucked up along with everybody else by this weird alien flying creature, and just like brutally just like digested and eaten alive. And you hear like you see them inside the digestive tract, and it's really claustrophobic and disgusting. And you hear like the crunch, and then all of a sudden the silence, and it's like, this is really, really, like, it's simple imagery, but really, really disturbing, chilling imagery.
Oh, yeah.
You get the feeling is like, yeah, these people are being eaten alive, and just like the horror as you realize what you're seeing on screen, and just like that psychological horror of like, yeah, this is terrible, man. This is completely horrific.
You can easily put yourself in that situation, right? I mean, that's the whole thing of horror films, is trying to put yourself in that victim's shoes to make it more horrific. And there, you're in this tube, and like you said, I'm glad you mentioned it. It's just the crunch and then the silence afterwards. And one of the big things throughout the film is that this creature cannot eat inorganic material. At the beginning of the movie, like it sort of rains down coins and random metal objects. And you're like, this is super confusing.
Poor Keith David, man. He gets it's like penny first thoughts, I guess, right? Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Too soon.
I have to go there.
But oh man, now I forgot what I was going to say there.
No inorganic material. Can't digest.
One of the most horrific scenes. It's like at this point, the creature is like angry at these people because they fed him a decoy horse. I don't know if it was like metal or plastic, but they're like, yeah, we're not going to feed him a real horse. We're going to feed him this decoy, see what happens. And it basically messes with his digestive tract, or its digestive tract, sorry. And it's almost like an act of revenge. This creature sucks up all these people. Like, it's got a full belly. And instead of consuming all the food, the people, I don't think it could consume that much, because it goes over to their house and just rains all the blood down onto their home, right? Like, it's a true horror scene. And it's like, normally animals are not going to waste their sustenance like that, but it's just like, boom, it got too much.
The way I looked at that was like the animal, like that was almost its way of like asserting dominance and like marking its territory.
Oh yeah,
like,
definitely.
Sucked all those people, ate what it could, and then just like spit out the rest. It's like, yeah, this is my neighborhood.
That's
like,
right.
I'm gonna squirt out blood wherever I want to, and you're gonna like it.
Yeah, I mean, we should probably mention the acting here. I mean, everyone is on fire. I mean, the four main leads there, Steven Yeun, was it Keke Palmer, I think?
Yes.
And Daniel Kaluuya. I mean, this guy is just phenomenal. Everything I've seen him in the past few years, he's fantastic. I'm not familiar with Keke, but she did a really interesting character who, I mean, really has her own self-serving interest at the beginning, and then has like a nice arc of throughout the film to turn into a better person.
Well, I think it's worth noting her arc kind of revolves around wanting to capture this creature, be the first one to capture evidence of this flying creature on camera. And at first it's kind of like a self-serving, celebrity chasing, fame chasing kind of impulse. But it's, you look at it and it's mentioned several times. They directly tied this family to the whole Hayward line, essentially back to the first images ever presented as moving pictures, right? As a black man riding a horse. So, of course, in the social commentary with Jordan Peele, there's going to come a commentary on race. And so, essentially, what the movie explores, another one of the themes, there's so many themes layered in here, but another one explores is like how black people have kind of been, their history has been erased from the entertainment industry, even though they go back to literally the very first, moving pictures.
We know the name of the horse here, but we don't know the name of the black jockey riding the horse. Like literally the first actor on this is just like, we don't know his name. And this movie, I mean, it's just like, yeah, this was so-and-so and brings that all together. But
so then I think later on in the film, it like Kiki, her character's name, I guess, Emerald Haywood.
Emerald Haywood, M for short. Yeah.
Yeah. So M and OJ, because at first, she's like this kind of, she wants fame and she wants fortune, but then closer to the end, you get the sense that it's like, it's about taking back that history and, essentially like, if they're, like carrying on that kind of tradition of like kind of the black trailblazers in the entertainment industry. So being the first one to catch moving images of this, otherworldly or other extraterrestrial or previously unknown creature. In a sense, it's retaking control, like working against that erasure of black people in media and in history. Like, I think there was a very strong theme there, related to the whole history of not just black people in general in North America and in America, but within the movie industry as well, the entertainment industry as well, right?
And I like that. I think it kind of touches on, I mean, making sure like the black community is still a part of the entertainment industry, and also from their angle, like these horses and wildlife are still part of the entertainment industry. And we see them filming a commercial early on, and essentially the horse has a freak out from the special effects, like mirror ball that's turned like right in its face, and it freaks out and kicks a bag, almost like a disaster. And then as they're walking out, they're wheeling in just like the green special effects like horse that's just like just this piece of plastic or whatever that they use the film horse scenes in, and it's just like, these animals are being replaced, right? It's just like everything is getting replaced in Hollywood. And it's like, it's so important to sort of maintain that history and keep going with the real deal to add that authenticity to it.
Mm-hmm. But also that also speaks to like, because at the beginning when they're filming that commercial and OJ's trying to, doesn't really have his voice yet, but he's trying to speak up and tell people, is like, because they're not respecting the animal. They're trying to get the animal to follow their rules instead of finding that balance and playing by the animal's rules. And he's trying to tell them, like, oh, like the horse needs a break, it's getting anxious. And they're like, no, we're just gonna start filming. And he's trying to warn people, and then eventually like it bucks backwards and kicks backwards, and it doesn't hit anybody, thank goodness. But it's just like that really kind of subtle from the very beginning. You see the seeds of the theme being planted about like this is what happens if you try to exploit and dominate nature, and specifically animals, to try and get them to do what you want without respecting their rules, right?
And then we have the sort of the third member of the crew, the employee of Fry's Electronics, played by Brandon Perea. I think the character's name is Angel.
Angel Torres.
Yeah, pretty funny character, like some nice comic relief, but like pretty relevant throughout the film as well. I thought he was a really nice touch to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And of course you have, I believe it was, I'm just looking at Michael Wincott playing Antler's Holst, who they meet originally on he's a famed like cinematographer. And I love that they basically enlist him because they worked with him on that commercial to try and get the shot, the impossible shot. And I love that this guy's passion is just like, he wants the impossible stuff. And when they're talking to him on the phone, like he's editing some really crazy footage of these animals fighting each other. It was just really, it looked crazy. I'm not sure exactly what was going on in that scene, but
some kind of nature documentary or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, all right, one for them, one for me. And it's just like, it's kind of like another Hollywood idiom where actors and talent these talented people will do one for the paycheck, like one for the studios, and then they go do one of their passion projects. And he basically decides to go and help these folks try and get that impossible shot. But he doesn't necessarily know is a real thing or not, but he's going to go out there and help them out. And I loved seeing the film industry stuff where he brings like a hand cranked camera, because it's important to note the creature like sends out an electromagnetic pulse that wipes out electronics. So if you're too close to it, all your cameras are done. But he has the old hand crank thing that he built himself. And it's another little throwback to the passion of the film industry that's kind of present throughout this movie.
Yeah, I think there's something about that kind of, like, there's something very physical and tactile about, like, you know, film as opposed to digital.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I think there was some commentary on the industry about having that. Maybe it's not about necessarily the physical medium, but about having that kind of direct connection to what you're filming, right? To the subject matter, so that you're not turning it into a spectacle, and you're not trying to exploit it.
Yeah.
That you have that there is that interconnectedness or that balance or that shared respect almost, right?
And you say direct connection. I mean, this guy basically sacrifices himself. He wants the shot so badly.
He does.
He does. I mean, he runs. They catch him.
Did.
They catch the creature on film. And he's just like, we can do more. He called it magic light. It's that magic hour. It's like everything is going to look fantastic. And he goes out with a handheld crank camera, gets himself sucked into the creature, and he keeps cranking that camera all the way through, and he's toast.
Yeah.
But he went for it. That was it. He was going to be known. He kind of knew that immortality was going to be his through the filming of this alien creature.
Well, I don't think it's coincidence that the camera rig that he put together kind of resembled a weapon as well. Like, there's a history of film and kind of, I don't know, weaponry or kind of violence, maybe. I mean, you think of, like, even terms like snapshot. When we talk about photos, snapshot's actually a term like used when hunting, right? When you pull off a snapshot, and it got carried over into, you know, artistry or entertainment side of things, right?
Yeah.
So it's like there's that connection between, you know, weaponry, technology can be used for violence, but it can also be used for artistic expression. So, like, kind of maybe that duality of technology.
Well, and I love that. I'm not sure if this is part of your point, but you sort of see it in films and stuff, like when cameras are being first introduced, and you bring in some cultures who may not be technologically advanced or anything. They see a camera as like capturing your soul, and it's like, don't take my picture because you're like taking something from me. And I think that is a form of weapon, right? I mean, you're going to steal a piece of my soul through this click of a camera. It's just like
the idea that media and entertainment can be weaponized. I mean, you look at, like we talked about earlier, about how one of the themes was, like, you know, the history of Black people being erased, like their contributions to the entertainment industry being erased / forgotten, and that this was a way to kind of reclaim that history or reclaim that place, or to find, you know, for Black people to essentially kind of reassert their part of the history and their part in the development of the entertainment industry. And so, yeah, I think there's not, like, even the way they load the film on, it looks like you're loading ammo into a machine gun. So it's like, I think there's some not so subtle kind of visual clues as to the weaponization of media.
They're literally like under one of these camouflage tarps,
like very military-esque.
Yeah, he's filming it. I did not pick up on that, but now the image is clear. He's filming it on this giant camera, and the other guy is like fumbling around trying to get the other film canister into the camera so they don't lose much of the shot. But it's just like, that's very much like a war film where one guy is firing this giant gun and the other guys are just feeding them ammo. And you always see sort of like issues loading it. There's suspense in trying to load the camera and make sure it doesn't get ruined or anything. Just like you're trying to load a gun because their lives may depend on it.
Yeah. Also, I have to, we're giving a shout out to the actors. Michael Wincott, I love when he shows up. He's in one of my favorite movies, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, as Guy of Gisborne, the sheriff's cousin. But I think he has such like this like distinctive kind of gravelly voice. I think the honest trailer for this movie, I think how do they put it? It's like, oh yeah, he sounds like somebody who eats an ashtray full of cigarette butts for breakfast or something. But it's like it kind of captures perfectly that. It sounds like somebody who's like smoked for like 30 years. But like, yeah, there's something when he starts singing the song "One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater," like in a really slow, creepy way that at supper, like it's one of those things like only that actor with that voice, like the actor and the character are so perfectly intertwined. Like all the actors and all the characters in this movie are so perfectly intertwined. It's like you can't imagine now other people playing these parts, right? Credit both to the casting and credit to the actors as well. Like that, I think you said already, Daniel Kaluuya was a standout. I mean, you look at his performance in this and Get Out, and I think what else was it, like Judas and the Black Messiah. I think he's done a bunch of other stuff, but like those three performances alone, this guy, has he earned an Oscar yet or some kind of award? Because like somebody needs to give this guy a boatload of awards.
I think he's definitely been nominated. I'm not sure if he's won yet, but yeah, there's a bright future ahead for him there.
So I know one of the special features on Get Out, Jordan Peele was saying like Daniel Kaluuya can do so much with just his eyes, and I was like,
yeah.
And I started watching the other movies with that in mind and looking at his eyes, and like so much he can tell, so much of the story, he can emote so well using just his eyes. There's so much going on there. It's incredible to watch. Yeah,
I mean that makes sense, but Peele would recognize that, and especially in Get Out, where like the whole hypnotism scenes where he, like his body's paralyzed, but the fear and the emotions that run through his eyes when that's going on is just it's something else. And I'm glad you mentioned earlier the slowed down giant purple people eater song, because there's another great slowed down song in this movie, Sunglasses at Night by Corey Hart, playing in the van, and it's like there's just enough juice, I guess, to play back this tape or whatever's going on really slow. But that slow down version was stuck in my head for weeks afterward. And I felt like it was like another like callback or throw out to a lot of trailers that just take 80s or 90s songs and just slow them down to like be artistic. But it's just like, it was so effectively done in the movie, not just for advertising here. It was in the movie, and it's so effectively creepy for such a, I mean, I don't know if it, like I could call it upbeat song, but man, I mean, that's a catchy song, right? If it's slowed down, oh yeah, we're in trouble here.
That was super creepy. Also, can we also talk about how well the title of the movie was used in the movie itself? Because sometimes it can come off as kind of cheesy, but it was like there's a couple instances where, like, example, like Daniel Kaluuya's character was like he noticed that like there was no rain. It was like raining out, but he noticed like the rain stopped over top of him. So it's like obviously the creature was directly over top of him. He starts to open the door, and it's like, and then he closes it. It's like, nope.
Yeah. And that was such a perfect scene too, because again, it's sort of subverting that typical horror scene where your actor or your character is still going to go out regardless of the danger, does something stupid. And he does the opposite. He's, nope, we're staying in the car. And literally the entire night passes with nothing happening. He sleeps in the car. His sister and Angel are in the house. They all survive that night, and you're like, here's smart people doing smart things, and it can still be a really compelling picture at the end.
Or when the quote unquote aliens show up, the kids dressed up, and you know before you know that they're the kids dressed up, and like they're coming towards him, and he starts to phone to try to record them because it's like, oh, this is our chance to record them, and then they're coming towards him, and he's like, nope, no, it's like, yeah, it's like acting like a real human being would. It's like you see these creatures like, I'm gonna run. It's like, nope, right the heck out of there.
Yeah, I love it. He has the old flip phone too, and he's trying to like take a picture with this old phone.
The world's oldest young person.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because OJ does seem like he's almost like an old soul a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. But there was this great scene at the end where they were doing their plan to capture the creature on tape. And then it's like he and his sister like did like the three kind of high fives together, not high fives, but he's getting like super stoked and super pumped. It's like, yeah.
Well, because you see him so reserved and like essentially, I mean, like on the commercial, he doesn't have that voice to like command the room, and he's looking down at the ground all the time. And seeing him actually in his element, he knows how to handle the situation. He knows he's dealing with animals. It's really his comfort zone. He's literally
been training his entire life. So all of a sudden, it's like, it's weird too. It's like, it's almost like he's finding purpose in the midst of this horrific discovery. He finds purpose and he finds his voice, and he also finds her voice as well. And he encourages her, as well, because one of the things that she talked about was that there was a horse called Jean Jacket, which is the name they give to this alien at the end as well, or this entity. But she was excluded when she was a kid, like before because like Jean Jacket was going to be her horse, and it was going to be the first horse she was going to be training by herself, because they own the ranch, and they would the whole thing, the family, like they had the horses that they would specifically rent out to the Hollywood productions for movie productions, but her dad sold the horse before she could train it. And so she always felt like she was kind of on the outskirts as well. She wasn't included kind of in the family business. So at the end, OJ could have kind of taken the reins a couple times, but like he hands it off to his sister and it's like, no, I trust you. And I'm like, you're part of the family, and like, I'm going to trust your instincts as well because you're my sister. And there was that kind of mutual understanding and respect between the siblings, that they were coming to understand each other. And she was understanding what he needed, and he was understanding what she needed. There was a catharsis there as well. So that was another, again, there's so many different themes and different concepts here. So richly layered. We could talk about everything we've talked about here. We could talk about dedicate entire 2-hour episodes to each of these different kind of themes and subplots, right? Like,
yeah, the worst thing that you could do, and I might have done this, is go on to YouTube and just search for Nope. And there's videos upon videos of it's just like, here's 27 things you missed in Nope. And they're all just these little tidbits of references to commentary, to just little in jokes. There's so much going on in everything. Like,
well, all the Scorpion King references,
the Scorpion King hoodie there. The Us scissors were in Jupe's office at one point. There's the Akira motorcycle shot was in full display. It was glorious. It was just so much going on. I mean, yeah, you could go on for hours. I'm surprised the trivia section on IMDb isn't just overloaded to the gills, but it was really fantastic. And this is something I think I missed saying earlier on about how Peele is kind of available to fans, because I remember when Get Out came out, and he's on Twitter and people are tweeting, these different fan theories and stuff. And he'll respond to ones and be like, yeah, that's exactly what we did. Like, we did that on purpose, It's just, these things are there. And we're part of the film community in looking online and people trying to come up with random meaning behind a bunch of random stuff. And quite often the artists who make this stuff take a step back, and rightfully so, they don't need to say anything. But we derive meaning out of a lot of stuff from our own perspectives. And here's someone who's just applying all of his worldly experience and beliefs and everything into his film. And it resonates so much with people. And this movie is really no different. It was fantastic from top to bottom.
Well, I think one of the things with Jordan Peele is you get the sense that not only is he a great filmmaker, but he's a huge fan of films. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Why he's engaging on Twitter is like, he just loves. You listen to him, his interviews, and you look at special features on some of the movies that he's directed, and it's like, this guy just like loves movies. He's, in a sense, he's a lot like you or I, like not just you and me, Brian, but like, yeah, like not you or I, it's you or me, like you, not like you or me, but like the general kind of film community, right? He loves movies. He loves talking about movies. So I think that's part of the thing too, is like he's got his kind of foot in both worlds. Almost like I always think about Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith's really active online, but
yes, yeah,
it's because you look at his podcasts and you look at his TV shows and stuff, like all the Comic Book Man, he's a huge fan. And he loves to nerd out on stuff. Yeah. And I think the same is true with Jordan Peele. I think it's great to have like somebody who actually loves film making films.
Without a doubt. So with all that being said, I mean, we got to talk about our ratings for this film, unless there's anything else you wanted to mention about the film before we move on to ratings.
There's one thing we didn't talk about. Small element, that shoe.
Yes, the shoe.
Yeah. And I think there was a misdirect there. For context, during the flashbacks to the horrific attack by Gordy the chimpanzee, there's a shot of this shoe from one of the victims. I think it's meant to be from the little girl, but the shoe is standing up, like on its heel, like facing straight up. And I think it was like meant to be a misdirect. I think it was shown in trailers where it's like, oh, like is something supernatural going on?
Exactly, yeah.
But I think what it was to me was, in terms of Jupe's trauma, it's one of those like just random occurrences, right? You could flip a coin 100 times and it could come up heads or tails, but there's also a chance it could land on its edge and stand up on its edge. It's a freak occurrence. Does that mean something supernatural happened? No. Is there actually any meaning to it? No. But for his traumatized mind, because he has that same shoe on display in his Gordy shrine there,
Yeah.
it's one way for him mentally to kind of deal with that trauma. Like in the context of the movie, that's kind of what I saw it representing, is just like it's him mythologizing the spectacle of it all, right? It's like this had to have been some kind of, because he was special or because this event was special, had to have some kind of meaning. But also like on a meta level, it's like almost like a misdirect from Jordan Peele.
I was gonna say, I'm glad you mentioned the advertising, because I think that shot right there and the idea that there's some aliens definitely lead people into believing that this has a lot more significance than it did. And I think it maybe hurt the movie when people watched it and they never got an explanation on what the shoe is or why it did that. And for me, it was just that perfect encapsulation of freak moments. And
yeah, exactly.
And as they said in the movie, it's a bad miracle. I mean, you could say it's a miracle that a shoe landed that way, or a coin lands on its edge instead of one of its sides. This one is a bad miracle because it happened during such a tragedy. And for me, it also maybe, I mean, the child actor, like he's focused in on the shoe. Like, why did that happen? There's this madness going on. It's almost like he was able to keep his cool and stay under the table by focusing in on the shoe. That's why it's sort of a bad miracle. It's happening at a bad time, but it might have kept him alive and not making eye contact with Gordy.
Because he was focused looking at the shoe, he wasn't looking at Gordy in the eye and breaking one of those rules and like making a show kind of dominance. So like that shoe may have, in an ironic way, an ironic twist of fate, may have actually kept him alive. So in his own personal mythology, he's not maybe entirely wrong, right?
Yeah. And I have to believe, and maybe this is something I've just created in my own head, is that he may be the only one who's seen the shoe in that state. And you think after they shoot him, all the people would come rushing in, they knock stuff over. That shoe is probably going to fall over from like a gust of wind as someone runs by it. And so that is just something like he tells the story, like the SNL version, only he knows the true events of everything that happened on that stage on that day. And maybe he's kept that shoe miracle to himself. Like that was it right there. So, I mean, that's what I got out of it, at least. I don't know if it's right or not, but
it's also great too, in terms of like just that shoe and how it was kind of mythologized was almost like Jordan Peele also making a commentary on how we take something that might be mundane or innocuous and we, put meaning onto it, whether that's for good or ill. Sometimes it's like we're putting meaning on where there is no meaning, or sometimes even the smallest thing might have meaning to somebody else, even if it doesn't have meaning to anybody else. So I think it could go both ways, both as a condemnation, but also a recognition that sometimes these small things that you don't think are important might be important to somebody. It's all about context, right?
All right. So we use the 5-star rating system. You can't avoid rating a movie when you talk about it on the podcast, of course.
Uh-oh.
Where do you land on rating Nope?
Okay. I think I have it rated at currently 4.5 stars.
Respectable.
I think it might top out, potentially go up to either 5 stars or have that extra kind of like against it. Cause like it was one of those movies, immediately after watching it, I went home and I was just like, I spent hours on Reddit, online, on YouTube, just watching other people's interpretations, other things that I may have missed. I'm thinking about this constantly, and it stuck with me. This is weeks later, and I still thinking about that movie. And I remember sitting in the theater, Brian, you'd come down, and we were actually in the same place at the same time, a rare occurrence these days. And we were sitting in the theater, and I remember about 2/3 through the movie, just looking up, and I had a giant smile on my face. Not because of the subject matter, which was it wasn't as much a horror film as I felt it was more like a kind of sci-fi film. There was certainly horrific elements, but just like the smile on my face was just due to the fact that like here was like this amazing original storytelling from like, dare I say, like an auteur kind of voice. Wasn't a sequel, a prequel, anything like that. Original film, but also is like from the technical side of things, amazingly well crafted, but also just like thematically, so much was going on. Just an incredible experience all around.
This is a movie that reminds you why you love movies, right?
Yeah.
And I feel the same way. I'm in a theater. We're watching this together. It's an original film. This guy gets to write and direct it.
Yep.
His company is producing it. His full control over it, and it's just on fire the entire time. It's just so good. This is why I want to go out to see movies in theaters. This is why I love movies to begin with. Just innovation, originality. I mean, sometimes you come out of a recent blockbuster, you think, man, they must have run out of ideas. They can't do anything else anymore. And then boom, this thing comes out. And it's a reminder, it's like, yeah, you got to go out and seek some of these movies sometimes. Peele is getting enough mainstream attention that this gets a real nice wide release. Yeah. People are going out to see it. You don't have to love it. You don't have to hate it. Everyone has their own opinion on it. It's fantastic. I love that it's layered enough that people get different things out of his movies. The art is up for interpretation, and this is no different. It was just really fantastic. I watched it, obviously, with you that first go around. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. I went home 4 days later. I'm watching it again in theater with another friend, and I come out and I'm just like, why joke with myself? Why 4.5? So maybe I just bumped it up to 5 stars. This is a 5-star film. And I think over the past year, it's just like, oh, I'm starting to rate movies more on, am I going to rewatch this? Am I going to love rewatching this and this one? Yeah, I look forward to watching this again. And it's probably it'll be another 5-star, and it'll probably get that like next time. But easily 5-star film for me. Absolutely incredible from start to finish.
Yeah, I think for me, Jordan Peele is 3 for 3. I think Get Out for me is easily, that's a 5-star film. I just rewatched that. I think Us is one of those ones too. Is like, I think I ranked it 4.5 initially. I think like by the time I rewatch these, they might all be 5-star films.
Right.
Like,
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, for me, I would put Us at the bottom. I would probably put Get Out.
Actually, yeah.
Nope, and then Us if I had to rank them. But I mean, we're talking.
I would rank them exactly
splitting hairs out of 5-star films. So
yeah, exactly.
General audiences were a little less enthusiastic about it. The average Letterboxd rating is 3.9, which is still very, very high for a Letterboxd rating. And that's on about 500,000 views. Rotten Tomatoes, of course, love it or hate it, has an 82% critic approval rating on there. That's 82% of critics found the movie generally positive. And audiences on Rotten Tomatoes was about 68%. IMDb, they have a crazy rating system. That movie's at a perfect 7.0 out of 10 on their platform. This movie, I see a budget of about $68 million worldwide, has made $162 million. Seems like it's a profitable film. I mean, we're going to get more Peele movies out of this. He almost seems like a sure thing at the box office. Really neat. It came out on video on demand like maybe a month and a half after it came out in theaters. So it's out there for everybody to check out pretty soon afterwards. But in the theaters for everyone who wants to see it. And I'm glad we got to see it in theaters.
Yeah, 100%. This is one of those movies just like for different reasons, but like Top Gun Maverick, I mean, I think it lends itself really well to the big screen.
I assume you're going to be buying this on disc when it comes out for our physical movie collections here.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think when we were visiting recently, I picked up the 4K of Us, so I have Get Out and Us on 4K. Nope is a no-brainer. I'm gonna pick that up for the current Jordan Peele trilogy, and hopefully it's gonna be a much larger trilogy going forward. I'm hoping for at least like Tarantino-esque. Get the 10 movies in there. Nice round number.